We are in the Lindauer Straße, 22. That was the place that in the summer of 2011 happened this project that it was Mika Moka project. And actually I was recently arriving to Berlin, and then I was invited to join during a couple of months this project, and for me it was very significant to sort of meet with you here, because there's like all of this need about the common spaces, or which spaces we share, or in which places we share knowledge and we share the work. And for me, on that summer, the space was here. First of all, it's very hip, or I have the feeling that everybody talks about sharing and about communicating with others and extending needs and desires, and that's because it is still very important for me to generate these spaces, or generate all of these common situations. Maybe because a little bit coming from Spain, we were mentioning before, we sort of have this culture of being in a bar and just like sharing time with people that doesn't necessarily is doing your own work, or they are not your own generation. Like you share like these experiences and these issues that are a little bit more like quotidian things, and that's a very interesting feeding material for keep on working and keep on understanding what we are doing together. So the common understand as a very transgressive nature of being against of this sort of individualistic world and competitive world that we are sort of drawn by. Well, that's like this like micro family, or this orbitation of that it's created on the team that you're working with for a specific time, in which there's a need not just to share the work and share the rehearsals and like be close together in a space, but also to live together and experience things together, and then go out and just like fool around or get drunk, or this is for me like also part of this experience of the common, and how we generate together these discourses and how we know each other better, and then it's like also what we were mentioning before. At the end, we are body, and we cannot decide if we are in or out of the stories that surround us and the people that surround us. And in the case of working in specific productions, of course, the people that it's with you during 1 month or 3 months is the people you are working with, in which you establish this sort of community sense, family sense, friendship.
And the inconvenient is that is the temporality of this job.
Yeah, then there's always a sort of feeling that you're left alone when the production is finished, the shows are done, and then everybody goes back, and you have like also this deep feeling of left alone, this nostalgia of that. And then I always think like, why I have this nostalgia? Like why I need so much again, like to just share a drink at night with that person. And it's because I don't find in my community spaces of sharing, spaces in common, in which we can just like meet there with a good coffee and just be there. Meeting points, sharing points that are not needed to have any goal in itself. Like we don't need to meet every time just to talk about work or just to talk about what we want to do. Maybe it's just like how it was, the day yesterday. Like what did you, like these meetings points, but that are a little bit more easygoing, more quotidian. That's why, also talking about where to establish these common things was important, or at least it's important that it's not just with people that it's working on what you are working as well, like not
from a
all-
different profession.
yeah, from a different profession, from a different age, from like there's a bit of diversity on
So-
these meetings. Like you experience this, like for example, like yesterday was 1st of May, you know, and you go to the squares and there's music and there's food and there's like a huge amount of people gathering and sharing a common experience through a festivity. Those people, I don't find those people when I perform, and I would like to find them, and I would like to share with them what they think about stuff, what are their needs, you know. So yeah, I when I go out on the street, then I realize that the audience that it comes to theaters are not always, you know, like very related to the reality, like what it's actually going on in our community or in our neighborhood or.
What is your impression of the audience in Berlin when you perform here in the city? What kind of audience is there any particular main characteristic of it?
Well, I have always a feeling that it's a very trained audience. Like it's an audience that it's used to consume culture and it's very used to say, okay, we have a night off, let's go to see something. I have the feeling I miss a little bit the gap. Like there's a certain age gap in audience. Like what happened with all of the people that is like between 25 and 40. Like those people that is like having child or going to work and then go to the theater, it means that they have to find a babysitter for that night or organize their evening in a completely other way, so they don't go so much. So that's a gap there. I would like to see like more.
So your impression of the audience is more like older than 40?
Sort of, yeah. Or at least in certain venues.
For instance?
Well, like more established venues like Volksbühne, Schaubühne, Radialsystem, like places that gather a huge program.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in a way.
Also, because these three venues that you just mentioned, they have different prestige in Berlin. Are also venues more related to culture with capital K, Kultur,
Mm-hmm.
no? Different from venues like I don't know, Dock 11, for instance, to put an example. And I guess that this also has something to do with this reputation of the venue itself, no? That is already related to big culture.
Yeah.
And this makes also that the audience sometimes it belongs to this profile of rather mature audience, or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah, but for example, like for like smaller venues, I have the feeling that, for example, like if the artist has to build their own audience, has to bring their own people there, like to see the show, because the venue has not the chance to really or doesn't want to create an audience, like a specific audience. Then of course it happens what you were mentioning before, that then just like friends or your network or dance makers are coming just to see the shows that you're doing, and there I miss something about. It's a bit centralized, like there's a lot of things going on there, and I think it's great because that sort of creates a schwung, no? There's an energy and it sort of gives you the chance, like between you are like working, like to have small breaks and then gather on the yard and have these talks and chats. But I miss that it's not just happening there, that is a little bit decentralized. So there's a little bit more openness and freedom of thinking, and like just different perspective or just different needs. That could just help us to understand better what is needed, or what are the future, or what are the further steps to create those common communities or those common spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit my point with Offer Studio. Yeah. When I meet with a lot of artists and people, and we talk and we just express like desires, and there is a certain negativism, or it's like there's a huge complaint about how things are and how things work, and it makes me a bit tired. Like sometimes I would really wish that we could just like also sit and talk about the things that are working and the thing that we have been doing like through the years, or how things had come together, and not always like from this perspective of the criticism, which is very important and it's needed, but I always missed also a little bit from the other side, like what actually is working and what we have together, or what we created until now. Well, the Open Studio, it's just again like a sort of a space in which you meet to which the others by doing, and not like there's not a goal of like we have to produce something together, we are rehearsing, or we are showing off. It's just like a need of doing with others, and I don't care so much if you are dancer, musician, fashion designer, dramaturg, a kid of 12 years old, or someone that has not been moving since the 90s,
And where is the venue, so they know?
Yeah, so the venue happens in the Radial System, in the Studio A, that is the studio that is using Sasha Valls, and it sort of happens once a month, and like the main objective is like to try to bring people together and experience like 3 hours of open improvisation with no leading warm-ups or anybody that is taking the initiative, but it's just like sort of for me it's like a playground. Well, I agree that there's this sort of invisibility of what actually the work that is happening on the studio or on the rehearsal space is, and what it's like, all the sharing and all the stuff that at the end, of course, it's signed by a name, and then it's sort of or publicly or in terms of criticism or like then it just belongs, it's a work that belongs to that name, when there's a lot of layers behind that is not just about that person. So I'm agree with that, but I have to add that I also enjoy a little bit this distance. I enjoy to have sometimes, or some productions in some moment, to be completely invisible and to have this distance and to know, okay, I'm here and I am embodying that, but I don't have like any responsibility of it. I'm part of a bigger picture, and that's also I also enjoy that. For me, until now, I never had sort of the ambition that my name is there written as I am doing all of these things. Mm-hmm. I just don't care so much. Mm-hmm. I just care I was able to have this experience and to be working with that person, or to be engaged in that micro family for a certain amount of time. So I'm okay with that. I'm not so ambitious that I want that I have to be there like. So no, I never confronted it in that way. When it comes into this shared formula, it's great. If not, okay. Like at the end, we know what happened. So yeah. If I see on my class, on the institute when I was studying, the amount of women and the amount of men that were there, and we all finished our studies. If I see actually the ones that are now on the scene, I miss the girls of my class. Like I miss actually like some of those voices, and I ask why. Like so at the end, there's a sort of clear evidence that that on bigger commitments or on bigger positions or big projects. Like it's the tendency to give it more to a male figure, and that's of course a problem we have to solve, because at the end we are all together making work, and we have, when we reflect in each other's communities and in each other's daily life, we reflect actually we need this balance. It's a certain so for me the only interesting point is like to see the gap when I go to institutions or when I teach and I give classes and I see the amount of females or women there, and when then I come to professional fields in which this is completely unbalanced. That's a point.
Exactly.
I'd like to
How familiar are you with the so-called queer scene in Berlin, especially in the dance? How familiar are you with this scene?
I was doing a project in which I wanted to talk about intersexuality, and then I wanted to approach this subject from my heteronormatism think. And then I really tried to engage, and I really tried to break through and make conversations. I have to admit that I felt a little bit discriminated. That
in which context?
Because like the question is like.
But I mean, where was this happening?
Well, when I was like trying to research or put things together, I was also going to the university to talk with the gender studies, one of the gender studies teachers. Like I had to be so careful about the language I was using. I had to be so careful about my discourse and how I was exposing my ideas, even if maybe I was not able to understand all the complexity of it. My wish was to approach it and to talk about it in a more easy way, and I felt always a little bit discriminated. They're like, why you want to talk about this? And my answer was always, why I cannot. Like, even if I have clear my sexuality, why I cannot approach other, and that was also like for me a big desire to approach or understand also feminism and where I stand behind that in terms of body as well, like which are the gestures that are more feminine or more masculine in our daily gestures. And so when I try to approach those subjects or more like the queer scene, I always like felt a bit discriminated because.
But nevertheless, did you continue?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And
sure.
Which are where did you arrive on this research or doing this project? Did you arrive into something that?
Well, it was just like for me a certain point of understanding where I am standing there, and to just try to make a point of it, and just for the sake of it try to talk about it into my perspective, of the perspective of my collective, because it was not a work that I was doing alone, it was a collective work, and we were also very different artists inside that, and to see also understand how we could talk about it in a more easy way and put it on the table, and then bring it to theater. We brought it to different festivals also, and to see also how audience will react to those subjects. Especially because there's a tendency of thinking this is a very hype theme, all of these gender issues, but they are still present and they are still need to be talked through. So it was just an exercise of dialogue.